And with the whole falling in love experience, one of the persons that studied that said that it lasted, the romantic part of it lasted for about 2 years.
And it seems so, because it really takes you about that long before you all get to know all that stuff you didn't know.
Like dipping snuff.
Yes, like dipping snuff.
I don't know, that just kind of struck me.
Me too. I'm glad you don't dip snuff anymore. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
But it talks about it's longer if you have other circumstances going on.
If you're cheating. Yeah, if you're tipping out, for some reason it's longer, because again, if you're tipping out, you're not spending the kind of time that you normally spend with your spouse. With your spouse, you spend a lot of time with them. You have an awesome amount of time to see all of their little idiosyncrasies. And those, we look for boulders, but the sand can make you blind too.
Ooh, that was a good one.
And so we start seeing the sand, and that stuff gets to getting in the eye. You do this little thing that bothers me, and this little thing, and that little thing, and the next little thing, and the next thing we know is we just all piled up.
With sand.
With sand.
Might as well be a boulder.
Might as well. Absolutely.
But in the book, it also talks about how when you do come down off of that euphoric feeling, that's the in love experience, and you plant your feet firmly on the ground, that all those little things that we thought were cute, just like you just said, those bits of sand, those are the things you thought were cute and things that you thought they would get over and overcome. And finally, you realize that these are just personality traits that they actually have.
You mean that's you? You do that for real? That's actually the way you chew your food?
They're irritating, they're annoying.
You really make that little smacking sound when you sleep? I thought you had a cold. But it's just like your children. If for those of you who have children, a kid can be 1 and 2 and they can do stuff. We say, oh, look at him, he's so cute. That little baby, look at him do it again. Cool. But after he gets 10, 12, 13, that just gets on your ever-loving nerves. He said, boy, if you do that just one more time, I'm going to have to pray for us both. And you feel that way about your spouse. All those things that you thought were cute because you weren't around them all the time, and those things really didn't affect you, now that they are always in your space, suddenly they're not acceptable. And then to the other person, they can sometimes feel betrayed with that because I did that when you met me. So what happened?
Right. And especially if you've gotten married during this time, that when your feet come planted down on the ground and you say, well, what happened to the person I married? What happened to that feeling I had? Everything just changed. You just changed once we signed the dotted line.
Well, I can tell you 2 things are going to change a marriage every time. 2 things. Well, let me say this, a relationship. 2 things will change a relationship every time. And they're good things. We just have to understand and learn how to deal with them. Okay, the first thing, number 1, that's going to affect a relationship, interestingly, is when you get married. The next thing that's going to dynamically affect that relationship is when the kids show up. And if you have 3, 4, 5, or 6 of them that show up, that's 8 that show up, then with each one, the relationship can yet take on a different dynamic. But all of a sudden we say, hey, we want that feeling that we had when I first met you.
Yeah.
Where did the love go? Where did the affection go? Well, let's go back and begin to understand some things. When we were courting,
Yeah.
We were trying to put and do everything that would make you like me.
And want to see me again.
Yeah. I wasn't about to do anything that could potentially affect the union that we had as a couple.
Right.
Because other than that, I had no claims to you.
Right.
As they say, you had no papers on me.
You didn't have no papers.
So at any minute, I could just say, peace out, see ya. You with me? But once you get married, sometimes those ideas change because life steps in. We have things that we have to do to make sure that we can survive, to make sure that the family can go forward, both on the woman and the man's. And from both of those perspectives, we can sometimes move away from the very thing that brought us together.
But when we think about that, a lot of people, they actually almost just curse marriage and the person that they got married to, and it's because you're in an obsessive state. When you're going through this in love experience, you're obsessing. You're wondering what they're saying, who they're with, are they thinking of you, what do they have on, what are you going to do tonight, and all those types of things. And those are obsessive behaviors. And it is that obsession that brings you together. But it is not that obsession that's going to keep you together.
Because the obsession is going to subside. I guarantee you. But we're afraid for it to subside because somehow we feel like if that obsession subsides, that means I don't love you, or heaven forbid, you don't love me. And that is not necessarily the case. But we learn how to move past the excitement. As we said, a man once said that commitment is what's left after the excitement of the decision is gone. And what we don't do always in a relationship is move past that initial excitement into an area where we can have sustained, committed excitement. Not that commitment is going to solve every challenge in a marriage, not that a moral clause is going to solve every challenge in a marriage, but when we bring understanding and knowledge into the relationship, then we can move into a committed excitement where we have an expectancy that no matter what's happening right now, this thing can get better than it used to be, even better than it was when we first got together. Now that would make you jump up and down.
And he talks about how, all of us are kind of egocentric.
No.
No. We kind of, we're not always altruistic. I'm not always trying to figure out what's going to be best. Not all the time.
What?
Yeah, you didn't. Oh.
Breaking news.
But that's with human nature. But in that in love experience, I am constantly trying to figure out how to cause you the least amount of stress. How to, like you said, because I want to keep seeing you. I want the relationship to blossom into something more. But once it blossoms, then I see everything.
Yeah, because once a flower opens, you see them little petally things inside.
Oh, yeah.
What do they call it?
Layers.
Pollen.
Pollen.
Pollen make your eyes hurt. The flower look good. When it comes out a little bud, and it pops open, and that pollen hits you, boy, you're like, ooh, that flower ain't so good. Make my hay fever mess up.
See, you so wrong.
I got hay fever to love.
I chew.
It's chew. That's what it is. It's chew.
It's chew. That's a good one too. He says here, the in-love experience does not focus on our own growth, nor on the growth and development of the other person. Rather, it gives us the sense that we've arrived. It gives us the sense that I am now in love. It gives me the sense that now I have this person that's going to share his or her time and life with me. So the in-love experience, it is, it's a great thing. But I can see how people could possibly be discouraged when it's gone.
It begins love's scorecard. That's your first love scorecard. Because after a while, there's another book we'll be talking about, we're actually talking about right now. It's called His Needs, Her Needs. And it talks about that love scorecard. And that's when you start keeping score. Now, in the in-love experience, you're too busy trying to do everything right to really keep score. So it seems like they're at the height of everything.
Yeah.
Everything's good.
They're 10.
Every time they at bat, it's a home run.
That's it.
Every time.